Good to go. All right, Mayor, we're ready to start. Mayor, we're ready to start when you are.
Okay, this special meeting of the Lake Oswego City Council is called to order. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor Studebaker.
Here.
Councilor Lamont.
Here.
Wendland.
Here.
Mans.
Here.
Kohlhoff.
Here.
O'Neill.
Here.
And Wynn.
Here.
Also joining the meeting today is Martha Bennett, City Manager, David Powell, City Attorney, Anne Marie Simpson, City Recorder, Megan Phelan, Assistant City Manager, Ivan Anderholm, Parks and Recreation Director, and Dale Jorgensen, Police Chief.
Okay, our first order of business is Resolution 2019 declaring an additional extension of the state of emergency ratified and confirmed under Resolution 2009 relating to the COVID-19 coronavirus.
So moved.
Okay, who moved?
I did.
Okay,
Second.
Councilor Wendell moved to approve it.
Second.
Is that Councilor Mans?
Yes.
Okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait a minute, let's call the roll. We better call the roll.
Thank you very much. Mayor Studebaker,
Yes.
Councilor Lamont,
Yes.
Wendland,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Kohlhoff,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
and Wynn.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, the next order of business is Resolution 2018, which is a resolution to authorize extension of the intergovernmental agreement with TriMet and the City of Portland for transit police services. I make a motion that we approve that resolution.
Second.
Councilor Lamont, second. All right. Any discussion, questions? Yes, Councilor Wendland.
So is this person a full-time person that's always with TriMet, or does this person fold in and out during the course of the year?
I'm assuming you're asking me that, Council.
Sir.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, it is a full-time person that is assigned to TriMet. They're our employee. In fact, it's Officer Brent, who's been an employee of ours for over 25 years. He's assigned to TriMet. He's been there about 4 years now, 3 years. And he's assigned full-time to TriMet.
thank you.
What do they do, Chief?
A very duties. They provide the police service for TriMet for their bus lines and their transit lines. So any crimes that happen on either the platforms or at the bus stops, then they're responsible for.
Wow. Any other questions? Discussion? Okay, would you call a roll, please, Ms. Simpson?
Mayor Studebaker,
Yes.
Councilor Lamont,
Yes.
Wendland,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Kohlhoff,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Wynn.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Ms. Phelan, are you going to be talking to us about boards and commissions? Who is?
I think Anne Marie.
All right, Council, you see in your packet that Carrie Linder, who manages our boards and commissions process for us, has proposed a new schedule based on some of the delays that have occurred due to the COVID-19 pandemic. She did run some numbers for us this morning, which I thought you might find interesting. So far, there have been 50 applications. That does include 6 youth members that would be assigned to various boards and commissions. But there are applications or applicants who have expressed areas of interest that cover all of our boards and commissions. Any questions?
Yeah, when is Carrie proposing to have the interviews and that kind of stuff?
We're looking at late June.
Okay,
You might recall that last year, the city council chose to align all of the board and commission expiration of terms, June 30th, with new terms commencing July 7th. So we won't be too far off that mark.
okay. Councilor Lamont?
So how many openings were there? If there's 50 applicants, how many openings were there? Or if you know,
Yes.
because there's
we
a
have-
couple per board.
Yeah, 31 openings total.
Okay. And then if I got it right, our resolution is for July 9th and 11th for the interviews then, right?
That's what we're proposing.
And we don't know yet if we're going to do them in person or online or whatever, but just set the dates in the calendar.
That's correct.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Next, council briefing. Manager Bennett?
Yeah, so I'd like to, David, if it's all right with you, start by just telling the council how we've lined up the state of emergency with their meetings going forward, but also to let you know that if we get to the point where there's no advantage to the city for continuing the state of emergency, we will just let it expire and notify you. But at this point, we want to make sure we still have access to supply chain and any other decisions that we have to make. So after David explains sort of what we've done with that, I'd like to actually ask Chief Jorgensen to talk about recent crime trends, including did the phase 1 reopening affect what we saw going on in law enforcement over Memorial Day weekend? Then after that, I'd like to hear from Ivan about what's happening next with the parks, because that seems to be a hot topic still. And then Anne Marie is going to cover sort of how we're planning for meetings, both for boards and commissions and also for council. Sound good?
Great.
Shouldn't take us very long. Okay, so David, would you start off, please?
Thank you. Yes, the resolution you just approved, as you may have noticed from the council report, is something less than 2 weeks. You know, the code authorizes you to extend it on 2-week increments. And the reason that was done is that if you extend it to June 10th, which you just did, that means that if you choose to continue extending it in 2-week increments, you'll be able to do that on the first and third Tuesdays of each month, at least through July, rather than having to call a special meeting in the off weeks. As you know, before, so far we've been meeting every week, and assuming you don't want to do that unless there's another special need, this will take care of it. So, for example, this would expire if you're extending it 2 more 2-week periods. It would expire on the second time around July 8th, which would be the day after your first meeting in July, and so forth on into August. It will continue to do so in August, but of course, council traditionally takes time off in August, and will decide then, you will decide then, whether you're still extending your state of emergency or you want to have special meetings to extend it through that month. So that was the reason for the change.
Okay. Questions? All right. Oh, Councilor Mann. You got to unmute.
Be pushing the key. Going forward, we're going to have to meet in person, and I understand the logistics around that, for me personally, are going to be different than perhaps for other folks. So if it's appropriate to bring this up now, I'd like to put forth an idea that rather than have long meetings with super full agendas twice a month, that we go to 4 or even 3 times a month to cut down the number of hours that we're sitting together in City Hall, in a City Hall that we determined wasn't adequately ventilated and a number of different things, which is why we're building a new City Hall. I don't know how full our agendas are, but I would suspect, given the fact that we have had very, very light agendas, that the upcoming weeks, June, July, are going to be very full. I'd like to get my colleagues' opinions on how you feel about that, pros and cons. I don't know if this is the right time or venue, but I throw that out there.
I think we ought to try, the first time we ought to try in July, just having 2 meetings, see how it goes, and be amenable to opening it up to more meetings if need be.
Well, we're opening in June though, correct?
So our plan, and as I said, we were going to cover this later in this briefing, was to have your first in-person meeting be the June 16th study
Right.
session.
Okay.
But yeah, it was also our plan to go back to 2 meetings a month in June. It feels like the situation is no longer changing every hour. Of course, I say that, and that will mean that there'll be something really radical that happens this afternoon.
Right. Well, may I
Councilor
ask
Mance,
this?
it's a good suggestion.
Can I ask of my colleagues if there's anyone else that would be open to considering 3 meetings in the month of July if our agenda is full? I have no idea how full it is, Mayor, but the last thing I know I want to do is sit in City Hall for 5 or 6 hours if we have that sort of item on the agenda.
Well, I thought we left it so that Martha could pull a 3rd meeting in if needed. Remember way back when she first came on board?
Councilor Lamont, I think, and I don't want to lead the meeting, but I saw Councilor Kohlhoff had
Oh,
her.
all right.
Councilor Kohlhoff?
Yeah, my suggestion would be that we get our work done. I agree that if the long meeting is set at a 3 o'clock, that's better for me. I think that when we start at 6:30 and it goes really long, that's not my favorite. But I certainly see where Councilor Mance is coming from, and I'm assuming, but don't know, are we intending to use masks, or are we not intending to use masks? And so I think that's the thing that I need to hear before I could really say whether I'm in with Council Mans or not. I mean, certainly I like your idea of having the lighter meetings in person if they need to be. And I'm not entirely sure, and maybe you could review that, why it is that we do need to go in. And I thought it was because of citizen involvement. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a number of public hearings that you can do them remotely, but they may be more effective with an in-person element, especially if you have to deliberate on some sticky issues. You've got a number of land use cases that are coming your way, for example, and some public hearings on ordinances. And in general, although we've gotten some feedback over online, it just hasn't seemed to be quite as effective for the folks who are offering you testimony.
So are we talking masks or are we not, Mayor or Manager?
Well, so the guidance around face coverings, and we're not going to call them masks because masks is a very specific kind of piece of equipment, is that you should wear them if you can't maintain 6 feet between you and the people around you. And what I have observed, even with elected officials in other governments, is that people often wear them when they're waiting, but they take them off when they're speaking. The problem, of course, with face coverings is if you take them off and put them on, they're not quite as effective because you end up contaminating. So it's really, council, if you want to wear face coverings, you can. It is harder to hear people when they have them on. So it's really... So let me finish this though. Where we're headed with City Hall reopening is that we are going to strongly encourage visitors to the building to wear them, especially if they're doing business at the city where they can't be 6 feet away from other people. But that we're going to stop short of a requirement because there are a lot of reasons, not just political reasons, not just self-expression reasons why someone might opt not to wear a face covering.
Councilor Lamont, you have a question?
If I recall, what I was noting earlier is that I think we left it for the mayor and manager to decide if we go for a 3rd meeting if we're full on our agendas. I think Councilor O'Neill counted, 6 or 7 extra meetings in there if needed because of the long months. So I would just think, let the mayor and manager look at the list and the agenda, and if it's too packed, we can shift to another meeting. I agree, too much it's more spread thin and not enough focus. But I think right now, just to get us back together and meeting and talking and being in the same room, if we remember the last meeting we met, there was 7 counselors and only 3 staff on that huge city council chamber, and we were spread out. So I think we can make it work, and including if it's a big issue and people come, they can spread out as well in the seats. You know,
Well,
we can spread out around the table.
I would say this, if you guys will allow me and the city manager to make some decisions, we can make very short meetings.
You know what? And I would be happy to attend them all if the chief has a few extra N95 masks laying around. That was a joke, chief, okay?
Well, let's play it by ear, and you know, we'll obviously we'll err on the side of caution. And if you're not comfortable, then let us know.
I will.
and we'll
I
take
will.
care of things.
I think Councillor Wynn had his
Yeah,
hand.
Councilor Wynn?
No, I think just to comment about Councilor Lamont's comment about there weren't 7 of us meeting at that last meeting we had. I think Councilor Kohlhoff wasn't there. She was in.
I wasn't there.
Councilor Wynn, can you get closer to your computer? It's hard to hear you a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Thank
I was
you.
just saying that our last meeting we had in person, there wasn't 7 people on council. There was at that time Councilor Manns was not there, and then Councilor Kohlhoff.
Okay.
DC at the time, so it was more space than usual because not everyone was there.
Okay, good point.
If we can't get you 6 feet apart, we're going to continue to do these kinds of meetings. Just to be clear, the difficulty for us is it's all or nothing, really. The hybrid meeting at this point, our technology doesn't work. When we get over to that new building that you can see out my window, it's possible that we'll be able to do the hybrid meeting, but right now we just don't have the right equipment to make it possible.
Thank you for your consideration, everyone. I appreciate it.
All right, with that, I think, Chief, if it's all right, can you just talk about sort of what are we seeing out in space, and how did 10 p.m. closing time work?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. On Friday, when we got the notice that Clackamas County was going to open phase 1, which was, I think, sort of a surprise for everybody that it came the way it did. We obviously were ready and prepared, and had a conversation with our folks that were going to work the weekend. It was a beautiful weekend for most of it, and I am happy to report that we had almost 0 issues. People seem to respect the process and respect the governor's orders, and even in the reopening, we didn't respond to a whole lot of calls, especially with those businesses that were opening up. People closed when they were supposed to. I'm happy to report that it was busy in downtown. I don't know if any of you got out and about, but downtown was pretty busy on Saturday, and everybody was pretty much maintaining the social distance that they were asked to do. We did have a few calls on just some minor issues, but by and large, I think the weekend went really, really well, and people, by and large, followed the rules that were set out. With that being said, the month of May is typically when we start getting busier anyway. When you look at the numbers, you know, the weather starts getting a little bit better, schools start to wind down, and so the month of May and June are really the beginning of our busy season. And I'm happy to report too that the numbers from this May and last May up to this point are pretty much steady. We haven't seen the spikes that we have seen in the past in some of those calls that would be disturbing to a lot of people. We've seen it kind of flatten out and not seeing the spikes. But we are seeing, we're out in the community a lot more. We actually started to track a new category that we want to track, which is what we call community contacts, which are just us getting out and talking to people. And we're seeing that is actually increased quite a bit. So we're getting out and talking to a lot of people, which is, I'm glad to say. And as far as our supplies, to put Councilor Manns at ease, we do have adequate supplies. If you would like an N95 mask, I'm sure we can get you one. But we are, our supplies are adequate for right now. We're not seeing a big red flag. The one thing that we are a little cautious are is actually our masks, our N95, because some of the masks have been deemed not appropriate for our use. And so we're kind of scrambling there, but I think we'll be okay. And with that, I think I will end. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions, anybody? Councilor Mans?
Do we have our officers riding bikes around town? I don't think I've ever seen that.
That was a good question. We've had a bike patrol in the past. We don't currently have any officers assigned to bikes for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a specialized training that they have to go through, and then maintaining the bikes. And then we have found that when we had them on bikes, if they were called, our staffing didn't quite allow it for all the time, because then if they're called to someplace kind of far away, they'd have to come back, put the bike on the car, and then go out to the call. So.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. You can always get a horse from the hunt club, perhaps not.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just joking.
And we still have our motorcycle officers, our traffic officers. Right. So you'll see them on the motorized bikes.
Did the training include learning how to ride a bike?
Sometimes it did.
Any other questions? Chief, thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, Ivan, how about you?
There we go. You should be able to hear me pretty well. Thank you to the IT department for setting me up. I think my connectivity is much better.
Much better.
So update on parks. So this last week, we opened up most of our parking lots. They were well used. Our parks were well used. We're continuing with the hot spots that we have are down along the Willamette River, George Rogers to Foothills Park are very busy with people, especially on the nice days. The other kind of indication that we're in a situation where people are doing a lot of takeout food in our downtown core is that we're having to address some additional garbage and recyclable issues at Millennium Plaza. Lots of pizza containers and takeout containers. So we're staying busy with those. We have, with the opening of the parking lots and then having our restrooms open, we have seen an uptick in our need to be attendant to our public restrooms in our parks. We're staffed up to do that. So we've been cleaning those restrooms, twice a day, 7 days a week, and then making sure they're stocked so that we're meeting all of the guidelines there. We've started conversations with our youth sports and our adult sports organizations and looping in LO School District on those conversations about athletic fields. We're going to be sending out some guidelines that we've discussed with the school district to those organized groups so they understand as athletic fields open what the expectations and some of the mandated regulations are on those. And we're also looking at sports courts outside of basketball courts of working with our neighboring communities and with the district to have some coordinated openings of those as well. As you're all aware, moving into phase one of the facilities that we have that kind of falls into phase one that we're still working through an operational plan for is our tennis center. It is allowed to open in phase one, but we're dealing with the uniqueness of our tennis center in its current state, which we're hopeful that the plan that we're putting together for renovation will alleviate it. We have an issue with getting people in and out of the facility in a safe manner because of the narrowness of our entrance. So, but we are working through that plan. We are planning on making some announcements later this week in regard to possible openings of athletic fields and courts, and mostly kind of what the expectations and what we need to do that safely as we move forward. Other than that, it's been amazing how the community's responded to the openings. And I know that we've all received a lot of emails during this time, but I think our slow and very metered opening and reopening the things and allowing those opportunities to happen has paid off, because our community seems very well versed in physical distancing and adhering to the rules and making it enjoyable for all users. So I think it's paying off. And last thing I'll touch on, because I know the question will come up and I know that we've been receiving a lot of emails, is in regard to playgrounds. Where we're at on playgrounds, we have actually began, and we're about 3/4 of the way done of essentially a deep cleaning that we do of our playground structures anyway, about every 3 years. So we're doing that in preparation that as we move towards phase 2, that there may possibly be an update from the Oregon Health Authority on playgrounds. Right now, playgrounds are currently both by the Oregon Health Authority and the governor's office and CDC recommendations, they remain closed throughout the state. And that goes for private and public play facilities. So we're pretty well prepared for the time that those are allowed to be reopened, to reopen them. We've taken the opportunity to make sure that we've done our inspections, we've done our deep cleaning, we're freshening up all of our fall material, so we'll be ready when the day comes when we can do that. So, but at this point, I would say that we're probably at least 3 weeks or so away from that consideration from the Oregon Health Authority, based on the discussions I've been able to be in on.
Councilor Lamont, you had a question?
Yes, I want to give a shout out to the Parks and Recreation Department. We had our first Zoom meeting for the Parks and Natural Resources Advisory Board last week. And it's just amazing what we're doing over there. There's 13 or 14 active projects I counted, whether it's almost done, in the works, or coming up, or putting packs together to get projects done. It's amazing, Ivan. So you guys deserve a shout out for the whole department.
Thank you.
And the Parks Advisory Board.
Yes.
Ivan, I have a question.
Yeah.
Driving on South Shore, on Iron Mountain Boulevard.
Yes.
You've begun in earnest doing the parks plan on that. Can you tell me when you expect to finish that project?
So we that project, as well as Woodmont, were opened up in May. So let me count on my fingers: June, July, probably October is when they'll be completely completed. We gave about there's 180 days in the contracts from the time we signed them for completion. You're going to see a pretty dramatic change. Well, you already have it at Iron Mountain, but you'll see a dramatic change. But there is still we still have some utilities and stuff, but it's about 180 days. So in October is when we expect both Woodmont and Iron Mountain to be completely finished and ready for the public to enjoy them.
Thank you. Councilor Mans? You're going to have to unmute, Councilor Mans.
The tennis center. Do we have, I know we've been delayed in all that we've done because of the pandemic. Do we have an idea when we're going to start the planning process, or can you let me know where we are in the planning process? Because that was a top tier bond issue item, and I had people asking about it. So I have you here, and I shall ask you.
Okay, so the capital project at the tennis center, we're done with the design development on that. So we're moving into construction, drawing development, and engineering on that. We anticipate that that work should be done by September, by the 1st of September. So it's going to take us a couple more, 3 more months to really get that hammered down. One of the things that we're considering on that right now, and we're working both with the tennis community and with our staff, is the appropriate time for us to bid and actually go into construction. Being that it is our enterprise fund, that is a fund that operates in the black, there will be a consideration of that. And the indication we have now is that the preferred construction time will be a construction time that begins somewhere in mid-January and then lasts for about 6 months. And what that'll do is that'll help us minimize the financial impact that we have for being closed for those months. And we're still working out the details of that, but there's conversations with our staff there and with the tennis community on that. But financially, that looks like the best time frame to actually have the actual construction and the reclosure of the facility to take place.
Awesome. Thank you for that information.
Yep.
Other questions, anybody? Councilor Wendland?
I'd just like to thank Ivan as well. There's a lot of balls in the air, and his group is going through all this closure and opening on top of all these capital projects. So I do want to thank him very much, and his whole department. I know they're working hard. The other people that I want to thank is the citizens of Lake Oswego for being model citizens, and to the chief's admiration of no major things during this weekend shows that we have adults and kids in Lake Oswego that are co-commuting, and they're doing hopefully the right thing, and I am hopeful that they will continue to do the right things. The schools are going to be let out. Graduation is this week, so we'll have a bunch of seniors that we'll probably be celebrating. So we'll see how it all works, but we're off to a good start, and I hope we stay that way. So anyway, thanks.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Anderholm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ivan. Okay, Anne Marie, do you want to talk about boards and commissions? You know, the cat is now out of the bag. They've talked about the Parks Board, so you can skip over that.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Lamont. Yes, Parks Board did have a successful meeting last week. Next month, January 8th for Planning Commission and January 15th for Development Review Commission. Those meetings.
I think you mean June, don't you? Not January. I mean, I realize that January and January.
Let's not go back to January. Yes, I do mean June. Thank you. And both of those bodies will meet via Zoom. Staff is working on doing some internal training and some training with their commissioners, and working on a new way of noticing their hearings and so forth. They're doing a great job. There's been interest as well on the behalf of other boards and commissions to start meeting in June. And so they, knowing that these are public meetings, they will likely model their meetings after what Parks Board did, because they are public meetings. The community will have an opportunity to attend virtually. Those meetings will be noticed like that. We continue to put up our meeting notices so that the public is aware that the meetings are taking place, but you have appointed a pretty remarkable group of people that are very eager to get back to their work. And so staff is working pretty hard to facilitate that. That's all I have.
Amber, I hate to put you on the spot. Is there anything you want to say about the problem of in-person, some people being in the meeting and some people being remote?
Sure. As Manager Bennett mentioned, we do have some constraints in terms of how we conduct our meetings here in council chambers. When we try to combine the in-person meeting with that Zoom element, we're not able to get the audio feed so that we can't broadcast. So that's the biggest issue. What we could continue to do, as we've done in the past, if council chose to go this route, we can still have people conference call in to the meeting. And that that has worked fine before and it will work. You know, it has that added wrinkle of you're trying to watch that delayed YouTube stream and try to track, but we've made it work in the past. There's no reason to think we can't accommodate that in the future. And then a group of us will meet next week to talk about, should council decide it's time to go ahead and meet in person, what we can accommodate in this space here in council chambers. Our thinking is we would meet in that classic study session style, where you've got your large oval circle here in council chambers with very limited seating, and also the opportunity for people to enter the building, picturing doing some monitoring of that and doing some sanitizing. We could allow for citizen comment to happen in that environment, taking the right precautions. We also can continue to solicit comment and testimony in writing, and have items read at the meeting. So those are some of the things that are on our mind right now about meetings in June.
Questions, anybody? Okay, thank you, Anne Marie.
Then just the last thing I want to make sure you know is that the first thing you'll see the city change, in addition to the parks stuff that you've already heard Ivan talk about, is we will be opening City Hall services to residents by appointment only, except for not passports. So anyone who wants to come get a permit from our permit center, pay a utility bill, get a police record, will now be able to call and make an appointment as of Monday, June 1st. And we're going to use that sort of phase one time to sort of shake out the kinks so that we can have more services open when we get into we're now calling it part two because to distinguish between the governor's stages, but when we get to part two. Okay, questions? That is all we have today, other than to report that the library curbside pickup is going really well, and they've cleared out about half of the holds. So very, very happy library patrons.
Great. All right, anybody have any information they want to pass on, Councilor Mans?
Forgive me if I've already shared this, but Jenny Slepian, myself, and Joe Buck went and visited each of our youth council members who are graduating this year. And there were only 4, but it meant a lot to them. And I really want to thank Jenny Slepian for her work around that and pulling that together, because it was a very nice touch.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for doing that. Anybody else? Okay, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Looks like everybody got